let's get this baby trimmed. When I'm looking for a brisket, I preferably like one between the 10 and 13 pound range. This is a 10.73 pound brisket, perfect size. You're gonna wanna look for a brisket that's got a nice shape to it like this one. Sometimes they can end up being a little long and thin. Now the reason I like a 10 to 13 pound brisket is because they smoke better for me. They cook a little bit faster. That's why I prefer the smaller briskets. If you're looking to feed a bunch of people, you can go ahead and try and get a big 18-pound brisket. I wouldn't suggest that. It's going to be a lot of work to smoke that. It's going to take a long time. If you want to feed a bunch of people, maybe go with 2 smaller briskets. That might be the best way to go. Check out the fat cap on top and make sure the butcher didn't cut a big chunk off and expose the meat underneath. It's not the end of the world if that has happened, but just try and look for one that has a nice clean fat cap on it. Now you also want to check these ends, make sure they're not too thin. Most of the times you're going to have thin ends here, but we're going to cut this off anyway, so it's not that big a deal. Just make sure it's not thin all the way into the flat here. Now, what you want to look for is here in the flat. You want to make sure you have good marbling in the flat here. This is a choice grade, so it's nothing special. So if you look right here, you can see a little bit of marbling in the lean. That's what you want. You want some sort of marbling going on in there. Otherwise, you're going to end up having a pretty dry brisket. And again, this is choice. I've used these briskets before. Some of them are a lot leaner than the others. If you can pick one out that's nice and marbled, you're going to have yourself a nice quality brisket. So the next thing I want to talk about is a knife. You're going to need a nice knife to trim this properly, and just because you need a nice knife doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. So here I have a Victorinox boning knife. These are fantastic for trimming brisket. Super sharp, little bit of flexibility. This is what you're going to want for brisket trimming. You can pick them up online. You can find these at Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops. They're fantastic knives and they're not that much money. Highly suggest getting yourself one of these. Now when I open the package for this brisket, you can see there's a big hard chunk of fat here. This is all gonna get cut out. So what I like to do is cut the package open right on that piece of fat. So now when you cut it open, you're not gonna score any of this meat. You're just gonna score the fat that we're gonna take out anyway. So let's get this unwrapped. There we go. So here's one of those gouges I was talking about you gotta look out for. They're tough to see in the cryovac. This one's not a big deal because we're trimming these edges off later. What I like to start with though is getting some of this fat off this lean side. There's somewhat of a silver skin under there, so just work the knife under, trim that off. Now this fat I don't like to save. It's usually not that good. So you can just go ahead and toss this stuff. So I found that holding your hand underneath the brisket and lifting up the spots you want to cut helps out a lot for trimming this stuff off. Just do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you leave a little fat on here, it's not going to be the end of the world. All right, so that's good enough for me. You can see I still got some down here, but I know I'm going to be shaping this brisket later, so I'm not too concerned about that. Next thing I like to tackle is this big chunk right here. Sometimes you can get your finger under there, find the natural seam of this thing, then come in with your knife, kind of peel it out. Let me turn this around for you. You want to just peel this fat as you work your knife under there. Just take your time, go slow. There's just a big pocket of fat in here. This is very important to take out. You're not going to want this when your brisket's done. You're just going to have a huge chunk of fat in there. So just keep pulling it back, working your knife. Then when you almost get to the end, you can come on this side and just work underneath it. And then just cut it out, just like that. So that's just a big chunk of hard fat. You're not gonna want that in your finished product. But have yourself a bowl nearby because we're gonna save all the trimming. All right, so this looks pretty good. Sometimes you'll have to go back in here and work some more of the fat out, but I think we're pretty good right there. I think that's it for this side for now. We'll come back to it after. Flip this over to your fat side. Brisket's gonna have this big chunk of meat sitting on top here. A lot of people don't like to cut this off because it's really good meat. You're better off cutting this off and using it for ground beef or something like that. So go ahead and trim this down and just cut that off like that. Right after that, right here, there's a lot of fat right in this section. So what I like to do is go right to the edge of that, come down, then turn the knife and work that fat out, just like that. You can see there's still some fat here too. I'm gonna come back and trim this some more. Now I wanna focus on this other side. You can see there's this big bump here. This is all fat as well. So you're gonna wanna just trim that down. And we're looking for about 1/4 inch of fat. So just slowly work this fat down. What I like to do at this point, I'm gonna come in and just trim a strip off the side of here, because this is all fat anyway. Just cut a 1/2 inch strip right off the side of this brisket. Just like that. You can see this piece is mostly fat. What that allows us to do though, we can see how much fat we have. This isn't too bad, it's definitely on the thick side. I might trim it down a little more, and right here you have a little pocket of fat where the point and the flat are meeting. Just knock this fat down a little more. And there you go. You want to try and avoid going down to the meat. It's just a small spot, not that big a deal if it happens. Just be aware of that when you're cutting. So I think we're pretty good here with this amount of fat. Now we're going to want to trim some of this off here. I'm going to want to do the same thing and just trim this edge just to see what we're dealing with here. Very fatty over here. Trim some more. Now when I'm trimming fat from the point side, I'm not worried about taking a lot of this fat off. The point is very fatty already, so taking all this fat off isn't too big a deal. You can get away with having less fat on the point side. All right, this feels pretty good around here. Like how this is looking so far. Now I just want to focus on this here. Monster fat pocket. So we're gonna do our best to get as much of this out as we can. Now a lot of people like to leave this in here, and again, it's just not gonna be good for the end product. So just slowly just work this fat out of here. Use the tip of your knife. This is why one of these boning knives are great for trimming brisket. All right, that's not too bad. There's still plenty of fat in there, but now you can see this meat's sticking up again. So we're just gonna have to knock this down. Don't worry about this. This will be great for ground meat. All right, so I got this trimmed roughly how I like it. Now the next step for me is to shape this brisket a little bit. So I'm just gonna cut this edge off, just like that. Now I wanna round these edges off and this little thin bit. So I'm probably gonna come somewhere around here, like that. Now I don't mind taking a lot of meat off the brisket because I'm gonna use this for ground meat. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. So that looks pretty good there. Just want to round this corner out a little bit. Now I just want to trim this down a little more. Just like that. Come back to the corner. That's looking pretty good. Now to the point side. You really just want to trim the edge a little bit here. Don't go too crazy. Just like to knock all these high spots down. And I know it's good meat, but like I said, I'm gonna use it for ground meat, so I'm fine cutting it off this brisket. All right, then I just like to rub it down, see if I can feel any hard fat spots. Knock this down a little bit. Let's check the other side out. Yeah, so what I like to do is anywhere you got this brown meat from the cryovac, I like to trim that off. Just like that. All right, and that's that. There we have it. Brisket's trimmed. I think it came out great. Each brisket's gonna be different. You're gonna deal with weird things on each one. Sometimes this point is a little odd shaped, kind of like this one. Sometimes the flats are really big and wide. Just do your best. Like I said, this is my preferred method of trimming a brisket. Not everyone's gonna do it this way. This is how I prefer to do it, and it gives me great end results. Now, you also get a big old bowl of trim, which is my favorite part of doing brisket. So I'll take this trim, I'll separate the meat and the fat. I'll take the fat and I'll turn that into beef tallow. If you guys want to see that, leave a comment down below. I'll make another video for that. Then I take the meat, turn that into ground beef, and you can do all sorts of things with it. Tacos, burgers, anything. It's gonna be some of the best ground meat that you've had. Now, if you wanna see what I do with this brisket, be sure to subscribe because that's gonna be in a future video and you're not gonna wanna miss it. So I really hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please like it. If you're not a subscriber, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I got a new video coming out every week. You're not gonna wanna miss it. But thanks again, and most importantly, get out there, smoke something good.